Hey everybody, just wrapping up for this Friday. This is kind of our F around and find out time and also weekly wrap on just heading this week to rest for the work week. We'll touch on a couple of things from bringing our friends on Instagram here. We have to do the whole go live thing as always. And so everybody should be here that wants to join in with us, which is awesome. And let's go ahead and touch on a couple of things that we did this week and really what's going to go on next week as well. As usual, on Tuesday, we'll have our office hours from 2 to 4, and then we'll have our co working session on Wednesday. That will also be from 2 to 4. If you're not a member of veteran-communication.coach, if you're a veteran and looking to sharpen those communication skills and leadership, career development, go ahead and check that out and consider joining us. For business communication.coach, our office hours are those that one will be on Thursday from 2 to 4. So that is also another time. So business communication.coach is the one that I do. That's more regular, more general business type of communications, whereas the other one is specifically, serves the veteran community. So those are two things to keep in mind as you think about for your week coming up. As always, we end the week, and it's always important to take a look back. What have we done? What's gone well? What hasn't gone well this week? And say it again and again. Doing the look back, doing the assessments, the reviews. That's always kind of the least favorable thing that people want to do. And it's also one of the most beneficial, into that looking back, that spending time to doing the documentation. But it is one of the great ways that we can truly learn. Um, go through at least 10 minutes, this week. Ideally, look over some of the big efforts that you had. Uh, Ideally, tracking those outcomes if you've had outcomes yet, or using something to keep that in the front of mind. One of the things we will be touching on in both the communication coach communities is using CRMs for different things. So even if you don't have one for work, depending on your role, you may or may not have access to one. It's really beneficial to have one that you can use for your stuff. Um, Especially, if you're a small business owner, you're an entrepreneur, someone just getting started, maybe you're getting ready to enter the workforce. There are simple ones that can be used, and I'm going to be holding a session in the near future to go over that. So keep an eye on that. That's going to be in those communities, presented for those members. The other thing that's going to be touched on in the next couple of weeks, we want to start getting into some of the different dynamics when it comes to working with leaders, and what are some of the do's, the don'ts, kind of understanding the expectations when you're working with someone who's in a leadership or, a higher leadership position in an organization. The apex leaders, if you're in a large organization, such as like a Fortune 500 or something like that, or an organization with more than 1,000 people for sure. But also, and even more so, this is even more important when you're working with leaders for smaller organizations, because they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the support staff. If you're talking about a Fortune 500 company, a lot of times they'll have other people that are doing a lot of the functions around them, and reporting to them. When we start getting into smaller businesses, whether or not maybe you're a solopreneur, or you've got 5 people, 10 people, 25 people, you may not necessarily have people doing those support functions around you to help you get stuff done. And what that does is it really, restricts the time that you have available to interact with people. And so if you are in that position where you're trying to get someone's attention, there's some things to do and some considerations to have. And those would be things that I'll cover, because that is going to become a bigger issue more and more so coming up. There's been various articles in the press definitely one in Wall Street Journal this past week or so, talking about how companies are, reducing their mid-level manager ranks, and is going to expand the size of teams from, kind of typically 5, 10 person teams, and we're going to be seeing teams that are going to potentially be 150% bigger, 200% bigger, 3 times bigger, as we're going in to try and, companies are trying to, contain that cost and get those savings. One of the reasons that was kind of put forward for this being done is PE companies think they're hiring all stars at all kinds of different levels now. Everybody's a Michael Jordan. We know that's not the case. If everybody was that good, you're talking about very rarefied air where you have organizations that really have that high a level of performers across the board. Not that they don't exist, but they're special for a reason. And when we're reducing those contact points between managers, team leads, to the people that they work for, you're going to start having things fall through the cracks. And they can be very important things like how does certain tasks get done, clarification, professional development. And so these are things that are going to be changing moving forward. Um, these are decisions that are being made. They're the reality in a lot of companies, not everyone, but a lot of them. And how are you going to start positioning yourself to work inside that type of reality? Because it is a growing one. We're seeing it at a lot of different companies are doing this now. So that's going to be one of the topics that we're going to be addressing in the near future. How do you work and interact with people in leadership positions? How do you work with composure is going to be another topic that's coming up soon as well. So keep your eye out on that. And when it comes to communication, one of the things that is always a factor is it's the preparation part. And, you know, homework matters. When you're going into a meeting, do you know the players? Have you done a little bit of research? Have you looked on LinkedIn? Have you talked to people in your organization or in, common acquaintances that you have? You need to do that amount of work. And that's only one part of it too. What about what you're doing? Are you doing a presentation? Are you leading a meeting? Are you, having a dinner? Do you go through the practice for doing that, to go through the different steps? And a lot of people discount that, but it's where you get the confidence. You've got to do the practicing. Uh, Otherwise, you're counting on winging it, and that doesn't always turn out too well. And when we go through all those steps, and this is why these online communities exist, is to present the strategies, the practices, the concepts, so that you have the knowledge that people can practice with. Because when you're practicing, focusing on those desired outcomes you want, you're skyrocketing your chance of success. Versus like most people are just, and as I've written and talked about several times before, most people aren't so good at communication, and most people really aren't all that hot at their job. A lot of average people out there, and average is just the top rung of bad. You're just barely not bad enough to get paid, for what a person's doing when they're average. So this is why the practice is important, the preparation. There's other parts of it too. How fitness perspective. Are you getting rest? Are you sharp? Are you on top of your game? Um, there are other sources of stress. Are they factors or not? So these all kind of factor into communication, just like they do everything else that we do. So I keep that in mind. The 2 courses that are on those communities right now, they're worth going through for sure. That's why they're up there. They're things that I work with people one-on-one. The most recent one is getting into a routine of being able to have something to talk about so you don't sound boring. It's a big issue that a lot of people just kind of toss aside. They think they don't need to do any presentation or any preparation, which, hey, for everybody else, that's a huge win because people that do that are making everybody else's life a whole lot easier because they're just flat out not doing the work. So, something to keep in mind. Um, let's look at some of the other stuff that's going on here recently this week. And what is of interest here? So, of course, Wall Street Journal is making me log in here again. So we'll do that. On a little bit of reading. Yeah, have accessible to you. Because taking advantage of those opportunities is really important to do. Okay, so here we go with the bookmarks. Save content. Let's bring up something stuff that we're looking at here. And of course, we get nothing. Nothing like live video to see what happens here. So so one of the articles here in the Wall Street Journal is about how the bosses don't have time to talk to you anymore. We talked about that just now. Sizes of the ranks of middle managers, of team leads, are being reduced. We'll see how much of a long-term play that is. It's going to be interesting to see. Another one, and this is something else that I've spoken at length about, is the days of activism employees is drawing to an end. It's over. Bosses are over it. Companies are over it. They really want to emphasize that you're there to do your job, and you have opinions from different issues and whatever they might be. So be it. But work's not the place to bring it. Those days of airing all your dirty laundry and grievances, that's drawing to a close. So don't be surprised to see more directive policies on what's appropriate to talk about, what's not appropriate to talk about. It's going to be a big issue, internal communications, coming up. And it's one of those things where people can disagree with what leadership and organizations have decided to do. But this is part of the issue in that people who really are not in a position to make policies and been allowed to really kind of force and bully those thoughts onto other people in their organization. And that is obviously drawing to a close. So that is done. We talk about, something that's always an issue as of late is, attire. What are you wearing to the office? If it's, you're showing a lot of skin, you're wearing pajamas, that's probably not professional. You should probably, not do that so much. One of the more disturbing things that came out recently, though, was an article talking about how Americans are losing faith that hard work leads to economic gains. That's kind of a natural response, when someone is working towards something and not getting the results that they want. But also, it's important to remember that there's been a glorification or simplification that people become overnight millionaires. We have the 30 under 30, the 40 under 40 list of, a lot of people who, how valid are these successes and the recognitions when most people are actually having success as business people anyway in their 40s, when they have more success, they have more experience. And one of the key things to think about too when it comes to business success and economic gain is a lot of times it comes down to who's still standing at the end. Do you have the persistence and the wherewithal to hang in there? Because a lot of people will quit. A lot of people will cut and run. This is going to be really challenging, especially for those of us who are entrepreneurs. You're setting something up, you're getting it going, you're making the investment in time and money, your family's making the investment, and you having to dedicate time to work and all. And a lot of times, you don't see the results as fast as you think you're going to see them, and that can be kind of discouraging. The reality is, most people don't hit the goals that they want to hit. Most people are not going to have the kind of gains that they've been taught to expect in the media and even in schools and colleges about what you should expect to get. The economy, is going through some changes. The work place is definitely going through some changes. IT jobs used to be the silver bullet. That's not the case anymore. That was kind of a matter of time. Everything's kind of a cycle. AI is really hot. AI is not going around. Will it be as hot in the future? We'll see. There was recently a big lawsuit settlement from Anthropic, an AI company that makes the Claude AI, and they settled with a bunch of book authors and publishers and stuff like that for scraping their books without permission. So AI is still obviously a growing and maturing industry. But to get back to the whole economic gain part, you got to kind of hang in there. It's easy to get discouraged, whether you are an entrepreneur or you're working, as an employee for somebody. And a big part of that is knowing what you're going to work towards. And communication is, it spans across all these different topics. And that's why one of the first course that's in that I posted in there is about figuring out what your desired outcome is. And you'll see people say like, "Oh, what's your goal? What's that?" But they don't really walk you through how to do it. And that's where people can kind of get hung up. Um, a lot of times people don't want to write something down. And, this exercise, the other one about having something to talk about, these are all geared towards having stuff to write down so that you have clarity. And communication is what it comes down to is it's the struggle, the timeless struggle between clarity and chaos. Um, and the people that are able to distill the clarity out of what they're working on, what they're involved in, what they're surrounded by, those are the people that have the edge. That's a much better strategy than hoping something's going to work out. It's being able to distill and define what's going on and what you want to achieve, and then going for it and staying with it. And when you have something written down, you're far more likely to stay with it and be successful at it. So if you're falling into one of those camps where you're kind of getting a little disillusioned, that's normal. That's not bad per se, but also don't get stuck in it. Keep working, keep striving to get to those goals, whatever they might be for you. Because the alternative is you're just kind of languishing, and that's not anywhere anyone really wants to be or should be. Because there's lots of opportunity out there, and sometimes it takes some time to figure out where it is. But also, communicate with yourself, communicate with your trusted, people, advisors, your friends that, have your interest at heart. I was recently speaking with an entrepreneur who's fairly early in his path, starting a business, and he was sharing, you know, some of the struggles that he's had with associates and people that he knows in his life. And it's common. I think probably all of us have experienced that to one degree or another. And sometimes it's not very significant. Sometimes it can be relationship changing and really kind of redefining how we spend our time and who we interact with. And that's something that's just the way it is. When you decide you're going to pursue a goal, whether it's as an entrepreneur or professionally, you want to attain a certain position, work for a certain company, and people question it, that's really a kind of a gut check time, because are they questioning it because they don't want you to make them look bad because they're not doing something? A lot of times that's the issue. Sometimes it can be misplaced concern, in which case you kind of have to chalk that up to what it is, but you can't let it hold you back. On that note, you know, wrap up the week. I'm getting ready to hit the grill here and grill some food. I hope you're doing the same thing with your friends and family this Friday, and taking some downtime to recharge the battery, so to speak. And if I don't have anything up over the weekend, I will definitely be back on Monday with some more content, some more communication goodness. And go Gators in football tomorrow, playing University of South Florida. And the Bears are playing on Monday night. So we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed that it's better than last year. Everybody have a good weekend.